Okay, what a way to start the year. Good afternoon to all of you, particularly members of the media who have come here at short notice. We've asked to have a very short press conference with you to do what you normally do, which is to advise the public as to how we are progressing. And let me begin by welcoming you all to the new work year, 2023. I'm wishing all of you, those of you present with us here, and your colleagues outside of this building, for bearing with us as you have done, and we look forward to you continuing to bear with us in 2023. I wish you a happy and productive and informative 2023. The reason for calling you here is to advise the media through you, the population through you, that you did carry for the public benefit the notification by the Speaker of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago advising the parliamentarians and the population that the question of the appointment of a president was upon us. We do have a president in office, and as you know, a president in office qualifies to be re-elected, or, depending on the parliamentarian's choice, another person may be selected and voted into office. Because in our country, under our constitution, doesn't matter what we think of the constitution or whatever, but today, the constitution allows the parliament as a house, both houses meeting as an electoral college, and the parliamentarians of both houses have the authority and the requirement and the duty to select a citizen who qualifies, in their view, to hold the post of president. You would have seen me separate and apart from this sort of forum or from any notification from the parliament saying to the country through the media that our sitting president, whose original 5-year term comes to an end on the 20th of March, as per the Constitution, will not be offering herself for a second term. And I did indicate that this was an understanding that she gave to the country through me at the time when she agreed to serve the country in this capacity for a term. And she also came in when we were readying President House, because we did give the country the assurance that we will make President House habitable and make it the residence of the President of the Republic as fitting of that office. But she did indicate that even if that was so, she would have wanted to remain with her mother, and she did in fact stay in her neighborhood with her mother throughout her term of office. And I want to take this opportunity once again to thank President Paula May Weeks, one, for agreeing to come off her retirement and serving as the President of Trinidad and Tobago, and thank her for the job that she has done on behalf of all of us. And we wish her well as she goes forward to continue her retirement, and we wish her good health, happiness, and we are proud that on her CV she can put without rebuttal that she has been the President of Trinidad and Tobago who served her people well. So that leaves us with a vacancy. And as, again, the Constitution is consulted, you would see that, as the Speaker of the Parliament pointed out, there are deadlines to be met and steps in the process that have to be taken towards appointing a president. The first step is to find a qualified person who is willing to accept, to make him or herself available to be nominated at the Parliament. And subsequent to that nomination, there will be an election in the Parliament, and nominee or nominees have to be elected in the Parliament. That has to be done according to the Constitution by the 20th of, by the 10th of, 10th of January. So it's right upon us. And the actual handing over, one goes out of office on the 20th, the other comes into office on the 21st. And all things being equal, of March, all things being equal, the country would have transitioned from one president to another. A lot of the discussion and the anticipation, fair or foul, that comes with this comes at the beginning of the process, when who is selected, who is qualified. Of the 1.3 million of us, a lot of us are qualified for the position, meaning not disqualified. And before we did this selection, at the side of the government, because you have government members of parliament, you have independents, and you have opposition members, I did invite a few days ago the opposition leader to meet prior to the signing of the form, because there's a form to be signed where 12 members of parliament, any 12 members of parliament, required to sign that form to authorize a nominee to be advanced. So a person has to agree to be a nominee and has to sign saying so, and then 12 members of parliament has to agree that that person is a qualified person before that name can go before the parliament to be considered for the election in the parliament by the electoral college. So a lot of thinking has to go in there. Who do we ask? Who will agree? Who qualifies? Because of course a lot of people might be interested. And if only 11 members of parliament agree to support you, then you can't go forward. You have to have 12 members of parliament to support you. And as head of the government, I have been very quietly communicating with my colleagues in the cabinet, members of the national community from all stations, to see what we should do and who we should advance. I also had the leader of government business talk to the opposition whip as to whether in fact the opposition had somebody at that time who they would want to put into the consideration pile very early, and that didn't throw up a name or names, and of course subsequent to that, follow up on that kind of conversation, we asked to have a meeting between the head of the government and the head of the opposition. That meeting took place today, and we had a very cordial meeting between 6 members of parliament. I went with Minister Robinson Regis, who is the leader of government business, Minister Young, who is minister in the office of the Prime Minister, and the opposition came with Mr. David Lee, who is the chief whip of the opposition, and Senator Wade Mark, who is leader in the Senate. So these 6 parliamentarians, we met and we had a very cordial discussion on this issue of a selectee. And we both agreed among ourselves that it would be best if we are able to have consensus. But we are not unmindful of the fact that it is possible that we may not have consensus. But the meeting went very well. The opposition was asked whether they had a nominee that they would like to put for consideration by our team, name or names, because the way this thing goes is never one person who is entitled. The opposition team indicated to us that while they met and they looked over the situation and so on, and there was not a name that they wanted to advance, that they had. In fact, they did not treat with individuals. They treated mainly with requirements and what sort of individual should fit the bill. We indicated to the team, the opposition team, that we had done some consulting as well, both in and out of the government. And having done that, we did come to the meeting with a name, and we are satisfied that that name is somebody who fits the bill, qualified, and can do the job. And the name that we advanced to the opposition was the person who is now sitting in the capacity of President of the Senate, and that is Senator Christine Kangaloo. We made that name available officially to the opposition, and we indicated that the government, having nothing else to consider from the opposition and having done our own considerations and having the deadlines to meet and the requirement to follow the Constitution, that we will be supporting Senator Christine Kangaloo, and we will meet all the requirements of the law going forward. The opposition indicated to us that they would want a little time to consider it, and we indicated that we would, our team, there are 12 slots on the form, which must be filled in by Monday morning. And we, at the government side, we can fill in some of those now. We can fill in all 12 now if we wish. But we did give the opposition the undertaking that we would fill in 7 when we set about to fill it in. The leader of government business will ensure that that form is made available to government members. We will, sometime between now and Monday morning, fill in 7, and we'll wait on the opposition. If they, after consideration, they decided, even if they do have reservations or whatever, if they decide that they would support the nominee by signing the form, we will give them that opportunity, because we are better off if we can go to the Parliament with some semblance or element of consensus. If, on the other hand, that is not to be had, then the government will have no choice but to fill out all 12 slots. But we really would be happy, and I think the country would be better off if a qualified person, as Senator Christine Kangaloo, is our nominee going forward, and we as parliamentarians can agree that being a member of parliament in our country, the way we conduct our business as a people, that being a member of parliament does not disqualify you or anybody from holding the office, because the Constitution does not say that. So, having said that, you now have to treat with two things you have to treat with. One is that the government will be supporting Senator Kangaloo. She's very well known to you. She's had a long service as a public officer, as Prime Minister, and as head of this government. And I said this to the opposition: I am not one of those people who believe that because you have made yourself available for public service, that you have disqualified yourself from further public service. And I am not one of those who believe that because you serve in the Parliament, you are the devil incarnate and you are disqualified. And I am not one of those who believe, and the Cabinet supports my position, that because you have not entered into the public arena to offer yourself, to serve, with all that goes with that, that you are independent and you are better qualified to serve the country because you've never done anything for the country. And all you've done is for yourself. And therefore that makes you independent. I don't subscribe to that. Very many people have made tremendous sacrifices to serve in public service. And public service is honorable. It all depends on how you journey through public service. So if you have any questions on that, I will take those questions now. And as you may, let me deal with your first question, because I'm sure you will raise it. The first question is, what's going to happen with the President of the Senate moving towards the President of the country? Well, the law requires that upon being elected, such a person will have to vacate. So Senator Christine Kangaloo will have at some appropriate time to have to vacate that position of senator and then put her name up and be elected. My legal advice is that at the point of election, That's where she has to vacate. She can't hold two positions, and she can't wait in one for the other. So that's going to be dealt with by proper legal guidance. And of course, a vacancy arises in the Senate for President of the Senate. That will come. That is not a matter that fails the government. And of course, the government will have to appoint a replacement senator. So these are matters for the government, and in the coming days, we will deal with those matters. So if you have any further questions, I will take them now in our short press conference. Lee, come here, first question here. Come on, all right, you get the second question. Come on.
Dr. Oli, good afternoon.
Please give us a name.
Dr. Oli, good afternoon. Happy New Year to you and your family. Jesse Ramley from CNC3 News. One of the last points you had made was that, being a parliamentarian does not disqualify someone from, being a nominee, right? We would have spoken with the opposition leader just as she would have left DIP Center, and she did indicate that it was a cordial meeting and that discussions were really good. However, she did express some concern, as you would imagine, about the impartiality of Ms. Kangaloo, with her being a candidate and her links with the PNM, etc. How would you respond to that?
Okay. The PNM, as an institution in this country, does not subscribe to the view that if you have been associated with the PNM, you are disqualified. As a matter of fact, when we met to discuss this same situation with the opposition leader, then as Prime Minister, at that meeting I went with Senator Faris Al-Rawi, I think it was, and Marlene McDonald. And we went with a name. Unlike today, we had a name, because we did our job and we thought, who could we offer to the government for consideration? And we offered a name, a very distinguished citizen, who we had sussed out and who had agreed that if his name was put up here. And we were a little taken aback when one of the members of the government team said to us, that's a real good name. That's a real good person. But since you raised that, we can't consider it. PNM doesn't do that. PNM doesn't do that. So we do not believe that because you are, so some people try to say, if they want to denigrate somebody in this country, is that PNM. We are very proud of our party. We are very proud of the decades of service in this country, individuals who have served us and the country in good stead far outstrip the one or two persons who may have fallen short in any way. So we are very proud, and we expect that a person going into office at any level, being identified as having been associated with the PNM, represents the best of Trinidad and Tobago. And Senator Kangaloo did serve with the PNM. She was appointed at very many levels, very many more than most citizens in this country. She started out as an independent senator. She served as a government senator. She served as a minister of government. And for the last 7 years, she has served as president of the Senate and acting president. She acted as president in this country for 7 years. How many other persons of any ilk could claim that? And during that 7 years, we are satisfied that she served and is not disqualified in any way by her conduct or otherwise. So we believe that we are fortunate as a nation to be able to smoothly move, some people might even call it succession planning, to smoothly move from president of the Senate, acting for 7 years, and then being asked to serve as president of the country in that post in which she acted. So being a former minister of government, we believe is a part of her pool of experience. She's also a lawyer, if that helps. And she has served on both sides of the parliament floor, in the opposition, in the government. She served in both houses. She was a member of parliament for Pointe-a-Pierre. I mean, what excellent qualification of a person who is asked to move into a job. And of course, what is required by the presidency is a character to go with the letter and spirit of that constitutional provision. And Senator Kangulu has demonstrated that she has that. Yes, Leah.
Yeah, I wanted to, when you were talking about the vacating of the position, will Senator Kangulu be participating in the electoral college in the election?
No. She can't. She'll have to vacate, then the vacancy will arise as president of the Senate.
Okay.
And she wouldn't be voting for herself.
She's vacating from January.
Well, as I just said, we will be guided of the actual point at which she vacates. So, and once a vacancy arises, that vacancy can be filled, because remember, the current president is in office until the day before the new president comes in. So we can fill that vacancy, and whoever fills it will then be the person voting.
The UNC seemed to suggest that she's an active politician, in the mold of Leslie Robinson. Is there
you can't get more active than coming out of the cabinet. She has never been in the cabinet here with us. She hasn't been in the cabinet for 12, how many years? 12 since she was last. 12 years she has not been in the cabinet. So I'm saying that kind of experience is not a disqualification, it's a plus. And active politics, she has not been involved in party business now for more than 7 years. As a matter of fact, after she left the Manning cabinet, when she was asked to serve in the Senate, she was not, she had to be persuaded to come out of retirement. I persuaded her to come out of retirement to serve there. So to describe her as an active politician. And let me say this again, I am not one of those who disqualify people on the basis that they are active politicians. Many professionals have walked out of their profession, got elected, and stepped into the political arena. It's public service. There's a discussion taking place in this country now, led by many people who have, some of them have thought it through, some have not, asking for an executive president. Others asking for an independent person to go to the office and therefore would not be beholden to the prime minister and la la la. But if let's for one moment stop and think. If we have an executive president elected by the public in a general election, as we do here, general across the country, I mean, how will we receive a person like that, who is sponsored by a political party as their nominee for the post of president, and we go out and campaign for an election for a president to be elected, an executive president? Is that going to be any less active politically or more so active? So there's no disqualification. I think her political experience is what gives her the gravitas, gives her the strength to act with confidence on our behalf in that office, where I dare say she has acted for 7 years. Very many people in very important jobs in this country walked into, like Dr. Williams. When Dr. Williams came into office as Prime Minister in 1956, he had never served a day in Parliament. This lady has had 7 years of acting in the position. So come on, let's not get carried away.
As Senate President, she has had some conflict with the opposition, and in terms of the running of the Senate. Do you feel that might be?
No, I don't think she's had any real significant. I mean, I know some of our members might have thought that she's too lenient, and of course the opposition on occasion. But when by and large, if you serve in that position as Speaker um, or as President of the Senate, it carries with it a balancing act, and situations will arise where people will interpret. Opposition will always believe that the chair is biased against them, and it's only when the person dead you say how good they were. So she's never had a scandal. She's never had to get up in Parliament and apologize for misleading the Parliament. She's never had to explain her qualification, as being fraudulent. So she never had any of those things. She's had a very straightforward service pathway to this selection. And I think that we are happy and lucky as a country to have somebody like that available to us and willing to do the job. That's most important. There might be many other persons who might be just as qualified in more ways than one, who have made the decisions long ago that they will have nothing to do with something like this. And of course, you have the other side, where there are persons who are campaigning for it subtly and otherwise, who you want no part of.
Drew Brown, TV6 News, and all the best to you.
Thank you very much.
For the new year. In terms of what you just said just now, how wide of a field in terms of persons or potential nominees did the government consider or consult with? And what were some of the reasons why, let's say, you consulted with someone and that person said, well, they're not interested?
Well, that's part of the peril of being in the position that I hold. And I consult from Sieges to Charlottesville, from Carenage to Sangre Grande. But it's done in a very confidential way. Some people are being considered without even knowing that they're being considered. And that's what the job calls for. Because you look at what does the country have available to it? Who is available to the country? And you narrow it down until you get to the point of who is willing, having been thought of as a potential selectee. So I won't call any names to you, but let's just rest assured that it's not a monarchy where you have it as an entitlement by birth. Like Senator Kangle, you'll end up in this position where the search, mental or otherwise, would have identified you as the person carrying the best suite of qualifications. There are many other people. On this occasion, we believe that that's a very good choice. And I did say to Senator Mark a little while ago, when he raised a point in our discussion, that this process is done on a case-by-case basis. There's no set pattern that you'll get inside and this mold will throw out that. And when one of our citizens can be described in the way that I described Senator Kangle, sitting in the position, it is the Constitution that says so, It is the Constitution that says when the president is not available, of all of us that's left in the country in all kinds of posts, it is the president of the Senate who will go and sit there. That's the Constitution. So anybody who wants to disregard that now and say, well, she's not qualified for whatever reason, just understand that those who wrote the Constitution said, if you are able to properly discharge your responsibility as president of the Senate, then you should be able to discharge it as president. I follow the Constitution because my oath of office tells me I must.
You raised the issue of the Constitution and the point you made earlier about this conversation you referenced about if there's a time for a change in looking at, for example, an executive president or anything along those lines. Is that something that Trinidad and Tobago should look at some point in the future, if not under this administration or going forward, a change in the nature of the office of the president in terms of selection and power to the president?
I wouldn't want to enter that discussion today. It's one that we can have at leisure sometime later on, but just to remind you that that conversation arose sometime early on, and it didn't find a lot of traction for many reasons. And one of the things, if it is that is being advanced as a palliative or a panacea for the ills or the perceived ills of the current arrangement, especially dealing with the political cut and thrust or the political acrimony, that is no guarantee. They have an executive president in America, you know. And that was one of the best arrangements for democracy to have a president. There's no guarantee that it will go smoothly and there'll be no controversy or no shortcoming. So people who advocate that as an advance, constitutions evolve. And I would agree that we need to look at our constitution, not just the presidency, if that is a subject area, but other areas of our constitution. But in a country as deeply politically divided as ours, the kind of adjustment that you require is not as easily had. But we've had it. Twice in this country, in my time, we've had governments, one with 33 seats, one with 29 seats. I didn't see people advocating this instant change of the constitution when any government could have done it. So when a government has 22 seats and an editorial is advising me to embark upon an amendment to the constitution, I know where you're carrying me. I know exactly where you're carrying me. So, but for a national conversation, yes, we can have it, but certainly not now. We are required by the Constitution now, on particular days in this quarter, to do what I just outlined, which is to acknowledge a vacancy in the presidency, follow the Constitution, and have someone elected to replace that person. That's what we're doing now.
Prime Minister, good afternoon. Kimberly D'Souza from TTT News, and of course, all the best for the new year. Under this administration, we would have elected the first female president. Here we are electing a second female president, and I'm wondering if this is something we can see more from the party in terms of more female leaders taking up those positions, and is this part of that succession planning that you were mentioning before?
The selection of Christine Kangaloo is not a gender issue. It is the best person for the job at this time. And let me come back to the point about disqualification, because we seem here in Trinidad and Tobago to very easily move on the disqualification side as against the qualification side. She is not disqualified because she's a woman. The person to do the job, we look at the person to do the job, and the president of the Senate happens to be a person who is highly qualified to do the job. She's not disqualified because she's going to be the second woman. We're very happy for our record in this country of recognizing women as equals. It wasn't always so. The public service and other areas, women have done extremely well in our country. In fact, at the UN now, the UN has a number of targets for many countries to meet, which Trinidad and Tobago has met since 1962. So we as a people should be proud of that. And to be able to appoint one after the other, best person for the job, 2 women, should make us all proud.
Dr. Rowley, currently, based on the discussions you would have had, if you just provide us with some insight, what was Ms. Kangaloo's reaction like? And was she in immediate agreement? Did she automatically accept the nomination? What was it like? Any sort of course that needed to be done?
Let's put it this way. She was told of the consideration, and she was persuaded to continue in public service.
What would you say to people who may cite the fact that she was president when the governor of the Central Bank was fired as an example of maybe, people who may want to say that having come from the political party of the government, that she may more likely be the government.
The 2 things are not related, When the only thing that holds it together is the oath of office. You're required to act without fear or favor, not to act on Friday and not act on Sunday, and not to act on what is in the headline as against what is in the editorial column. On the issue with respect to the dismissal of the governor of the central bank, let us not lose sight of the fact that the governor of the central bank was not dismissed by the president. The governor of the central bank ran afoul of the Minister of Finance, who is his boss. The Minister of Finance, after a protracted period of complaints, did find it necessary to advise the cabinet that he had lost confidence in the governor of the central bank. This would have been one of the few countries in the world where there would have been a governor of the central bank who the Minister of Finance could have found it necessary to advise the cabinet of the country that he has lost confidence in the governor of the central bank. The cabinet didn't just swallow that. The cabinet had to be convinced by facts that the minister's position was one that was tenable. And the cabinet took the decision to dismiss the governor of the central bank. In this country, the Minister of Finance doesn't just get up and dismiss the governor of the central bank. Can't do that. It was done by the cabinet. And once the cabinet took that decision, the execution of that cabinet decision had to be done by whoever was at President House. And that is the Constitution. I mentioned earlier on about people who have not read the Constitution, not even a paragraph of it, and speaks about it with great aplomb and with great liberty. And we talk about but dismiss this, the private government, the central bank, and the president should be held accountable. And worse, those persons who believe that what the president should have done was to buck the cabinet and not carry out the constitutional requirements. That would have given them a lot of newspaper stories and make a hero for 24 hours until the court intervenes and says that you're wrong. So we avoid all that. The governor of the central bank was dismissed by the cabinet. I lead the cabinet, and the cabinet was led to that position. So that is not a blot on her book.
Good day, Prime Minister. Paula Linder from the Newsday. Happy New Year to you.
Same to you, Paula.
So I have two questions. Circling back to the perception of Senator Kangaloo, do you think that the...
What perception? Good perception?
Yes.
Yes.
But do you think, given her long association with the PNM, do you think that the public, not just the opposition, but the public will view her as being able to be impartial? And then a second part of that question, during the current president's term of office, she has come under a lot of attacks from various public sectors, public quarters. Do you think that Senator Kangaloo will also face those kinds of attacks?
Whatever comes her way, I'm confident that she'll be able to cope with it. I have no crystal ball. I don't know what's going to come her way because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. But I'll tell you one thing. The public who you speak about and speak for is the same public that on many occasions in a 60-odd year period, elected the said PNM as the government of the country. So if you're saying that by being PNM, all this consternation should arise, so what do we do on the day after election when the population by majority elects the PNM and there has to be a PNM Prime Minister and a PNM cabinet? What do we say? No, go down to Woodford Square and pick up 24 people and put them in the cabinet? No. And I want to reiterate this. Being PNM in this country is a matter of pride. Not just for the PNM members and supporters, but for the country. Because we have practiced democracy in a way that many countries have failed to do it. Because, we've been PNM in the opposition too, Don't just associate PNM with the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Associate PNM with being in the opposition when the population said, let's try somebody else. And if you want to know how good the PNM is and has been in this country, look at what the PNM has done in opposition. Because there too, we recognize that we are doing public service for the country and not for ourselves. Thank you very much. I must run away now. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to the process being successfully concluded. Thank you.